Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Podcast Boys. I am Connor Nielsen, and the other half of the Podcast Boys is Comics Kid 2099. How you doing, Comics Kid?
I'm doing fantastic. How about you, Connor?
Doing well. Today we are going to be talking about Twin Peaks Season 2, Episode 9. The title is Arbitrary Law. So, Comics Kid, you wanted to talk about something before we got into the episode?
Just some minor things. So I recently watched Robert Rodriguez's Planet Terror, which came out about 10 years ago, and I was watching it, and there's a character in that movie. He is a police officer, and he's been in several Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez movies. He was in From Dusk Till Dawn, and he was in Death Proof, which came out with Planet Terror, and I knew I recognized that actor from somewhere, and I looked him up, and sure enough, he was the actor who plays Jean Reno in Twin Peaks, and he is an entirely different character. He does not have the French-Canadian accent. I was almost certain that that was his real accent from Twin Peaks, but he's got this very deep southern drawl in Planet Terror and in all of those movies where he's playing that same character. And I was so amazed because I hardly recognized him. I knew I had seen him in something, but I did not know that it was Jean Reno, and I thought that was really funny and thought I would bring that up.
That's funny because of all the people with the French-Canadian accents, his sounds the most natural.
Right.
Like Bernie, like the other Renault brothers just sound like cartoons.
Oh, yeah, definitely. His sounds a lot less laughable than theirs did.
Yeah.
And also, I work at a Habitat for Humanity store, and we get a lot of VHS tapes that we sell. And I was looking through several VHS tapes, sorting them out to bring them out onto the store floor, and I find a movie called Slapshot from 1977, starring none other than Michael Ontkean. He was young in it too. He looked, I don't want to say like a teenager, but he looked quite a bit younger because that was a good like 14 years before Twin Peaks, and he was in it with Paul Newman.
Wow, Paul Newman, huh?
Yeah, I want to say that movie was called Slapshot. I think it was, but he looked really young in it. Yeah, Paul Newman and Michael Ontkean, and it was from '77.
Is he with the headliners?
Yeah, like on it's the two of them starring together, and on the cover, Michael Ontkean and Paul Newman are both like right there on the cover of this movie. I was thinking at first maybe like, he would just be in the movie, but like he was right there. Like I noticed him when I was picking up all these VHS tapes, and I thought that was kind of amusing because I know he's an actor who's been in several things, but I've only ever seen him in Twin Peaks, so that kind of took me by surprise to see him on something else.
That's crazy. That's awesome.
And it looks like there was a Slapshot 2, but it came out in 2002, and I don't think it had any of the same actors.
It also probably sucked.
Yeah. It looks like a direct-to-video endeavor. So those were my two Twin Peaks, outside of Twin Peaks, news items that I had for the week.
I had none.
Okay. I will go ahead and cover the plot of this episode. This is a pretty big episode for Twin Peaks. Cooper and the police department, at the end of last episode, they found another dead body. It was Maddie Ferguson, and this episode opens with the dead body being found, and all of our law enforcement characters are pretty bummed out, and Sheriff Truman is about to start going through the usual routine, and Cooper says, "Don't do that. Give me 24 hours to find a killer." Donna hears Andy saying something French, and she takes Cooper and Cooper and Andy to Mrs. Tremont's house. But it's not the same Mrs. Tremont that Donna spoke to several episodes ago. The new Mrs. Tremont gives them a note from Harold, which is actually from Laura's diary, and from this note, Cooper finds out that Laura and him had the same dream back near the beginning of season 1 is when Cooper had that dream. Meanwhile, Donna takes the song recording that she, Maddie, and James did to Leland to give to Maddie. This is where she finds out that Maddie is dead. She and James have a little cry over it, and James runs off pouting. Meanwhile, Cooper asks Mr. Gerard for tips on how to catch Bob. He tells him to talk to the giant. Then Cooper sees the old butler from the Great Northern. Harry still seems to think that Ben Horne is the killer. Coop calls up Leland, Horne, Bobby, Leo Johnson, and Big Ed for a meeting of magic. Also, Major Briggs and the old butler show up. Cooper remembers from his dream that Leland is the killer, and they arrest him. He acts crazy, confesses, and while Lucy talks to Dick and Andy about stuff that we don't really care about, the fire alarm goes off, and during the chaos, Leland bangs his head against the door and dies. Cooper guides him to the light as Leland asks for forgiveness. The agents of law enforcement talk about how crazy all of this is, and we see an owl flying menacingly through the air. Connor, what did you think about this episode of Twin Peaks?
Well, it's the end of an era. This is the end of the line for me. Not in a bad way. What I mean by that is, this is the last episode I watched before I stopped watching.
Oh yeah, that's right. I
So
remember you saying that was coming up pretty soon.
yeah, and I couldn't remember exactly when it was, but as this episode was playing out, it was like as a new scene would start, I would have flashes of how the scene would play out.
Hmm.
And then I remember the owl freeze frame at the end, and I remember never clicking the next episode after watching that. But as an episode, this episode was great. It was really, really good. Really good. I liked just about everything about it that didn't have to do with Donna, James, or Lucy / Andy. But they're in it in a very small capacity.
Yeah,
But man, there was some very powerful stuff in this.
I agree. I think this was talking about how you said this is the last episode that you saw back when you were watching it before. I think this was a very good episode for you to end on. I think this is. I don't want to say this is the last good episode, but this is definitely one of the last. After this, we go through a series of just not very good episodes where the show is trying to find stuff to keep itself busy while it gears up for the next big serious storyline. And this is a really good cutoff point, if you will. It almost feels like when you're reading a comic book series and some writer or creative team that you really love is on this series, and then their last issue comes, and then the series keeps going, but you stop with that creative team. It almost feels like that. Like Lynch and Frost are still going to be involved with the show, but this almost feels like this half of Twin Peaks season 2 and season 1 is all one entity, and the rest of it almost just feels superfluous. Almost.
I would agree with that, having never seen the last half of season 2. But I do know that Mark Frost stayed on in some capacity, but David Lynch kind of got booted off the project.
Yeah, you had told me about that. Was it right around this point when Lynch kind of left, or was it because I think that Lynch he comes back as a character. You know, he played Gordon Cole, the director of the FBI, and he comes back later in the series as Gordon Cole. So I'm curious to what extent he was booted off.
I think he wasn't necessarily he was booted off for a second, but he was still in correspondence. Like
Okay.
he wasn't on set in writers' rooms or anything.
Gotcha. So was
But
it
I
what?
think by the end they worked it out, and he was like the last episode or two, he was able to come back and have some kind of vision because apparently in this period between now and the end of season 2 there was a bit of a drought in terms of creativity.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'm very excited and curious to see what you think of the rest of the season, just based on what I know and what you're telling me. And also, it makes sense to me when you say that Lynch came back for the end of the season because towards the very end of the season is when it starts to feel Lynchian again. It's just a big chunk of episodes in between now and the end where it kind of feels like it's dragging its feet.
All right.
But getting back to this episode, I agree with you. I like pretty much everything with the people who are trying to find the murderer. All the other stuff doesn't do it for me. I will say that it was necessary to put Donna and James in this episode in the capacity that they are in it. They were friends with Maddie. We needed them to find out that Maddie was dead so that they can mourn her loss. I will say that James acts very weird here, where he suddenly just starts bemoaning how nothing in life matters, no matter what they do, nothing really matters. Like, that was a little strange. Kind of came out of nowhere, but part of that is that James doesn't really have a personality. If you go back and watch all of season 1 and what we've seen of season 2, he's mostly just the boyfriend. He doesn't really have much of a personality of his own or much of a character. So it was really weird for me to suddenly see him start espousing all these philosophical notions of nothing really matters. But I really liked, I usually don't like Donna or James, and I thought that the actress who plays Donna, I thought she did really well in this episode. When she's screaming for James, "Don't leave me, James," I was kind of touched by that scene.
Yeah, I like Lara Flynn Boyle's performance. Donna still just kind of pisses me off occasionally in this episode, though. That scene you're talking about with James, that's like I think that you needed that scene. But the thing is, you also needed that scene to be longer. I feel like that scene starts and then it just jumps to the second half of that kind of a scene. I would have loved just a moment where they're just crying together and sitting down and there's no one's talking, but you can see in the actors' faces that they just don't know what to do.
Kind of like in the first episode, whenever they announce at the school that Laura has died, and we're seeing both of them just looking at each other in the classroom. There's no words;
Yeah.
they're just crying. We needed something like that.
Exactly, and the whole first half of the first episode is just seeing the way the ripples this kind of death makes
Yeah.
in the community, and then another body turns up and he's just like, this sucks. Why do we even try anymore? Bye.
Yeah.
and then just leaves. And that whole response of her like yelling, "Don't leave me, James! Don't leave me!" Like that would have worked so much better if that scene was just longer and they built to that point in like just within the confines of that scene. The thing that I don't like about Donna in this episode is she shows up to Leland, and that scene between her and Leland is genuinely frightening.
Oh, yes, very much so. Especially after we've seen Leland commit murder now. We've seen him do this with Maddie just 2 episodes ago. So watching it this time, we're kind of like, uh-oh, is he going to do it again? What's going to happen?
Yeah, and the way that whole like, oh my goodness, have you ever been in a situation with like an adult where maybe this is a little too personal, but where you've been in a situation with an adult and then like you think it's all right, but then like the adult might say or like make you come into some place like a room or something that you just also don't feel comfortable and you think something might be up?
I'm sure that I have, and I'm sure, like, if I looked back on one of those situations in retrospect, it was probably, like, not a big deal at all. But as like, an 8-year-old or something like that, if it's like, hey, wait a minute, I've never been in this room alone with this person, this is a little frightening, even though it might have been unwarranted, it still felt very scary.
That's what I meant. Like, and that's exactly what this scene felt like. But it's also frightening because we have seen where this goes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that scene though, like the way that the terror just escalates because we're like, oh, he's already killed. He probably won't kill again. And then he shuts the door. And then he puts the music on. Then he asks her to dance. And then like it's just. And then you see like it keeps cutting to Bob. Like it is. And Ray Wise is just man. This guy is good. I love Ray Wise. Everything Ray Wise does in this episode is perfect.
Yeah.
But that scene was so great, but the thing that just like bugged me was she just like whips out a cigarette and starts smoking.
In his house, yeah. I thought that was
Come on, this isn't even your house. You didn't even ask. Just come on, Donna.
Yeah. I thought that too. I wasn't going to mention it. I didn't remember it until you brought it up. I will say this about James and Donna before I forget. I also think their little reunion in this episode feels very weird because it was only like 3 episodes ago that it seemed like these two had broken up with each other. The episode where he is kissing Maddie and then she runs out and then he's in the street stomping his feet and screaming after her. I was 100% sure that they had broken up and that we weren't going to be seeing any more of these two as a couple. And then last episode, they kind of patched things up. And then in this episode, she's talking about, well, I was thinking of last night. And then he puts a ring on her finger. And by the way, that scene with the ring was extremely funny. And I don't think it was supposed to be because he says, I wasn't able to get the correct size. And the lady at the jewelry store had really huge hands. But I think, and then he puts it on her hand and it fits perfectly. And I was thinking, James, are you saying that Donna has really huge hands? But like it just feels weird. Like these two are acting like they're still in the honeymoon of their relationship, but they hit a huge rock in their relationship just 2 or 3 episodes ago, and now they're acting like that didn't happen. And now James is like, nothing matters. I'm just gonna leave, and Donna's screaming after him in a moment of vulnerability. And I feel like they should have either not had James smooching on Maddie or just completely had them break up before this episode, and then maybe she could come back to him and say, listen, I know that we broke up 3 episodes ago, but I'm really in a bad place right now. Can you just comfort me? And then James would say, no, I can't. Nothing really matters. And he runs off, and then she's down and depressed because nobody's there for her. Something like that. It felt really weird.
I agree. While I was watching this is all like first half of the episode stuff, so I kind of forgot about it for a moment. But while I was watching that, James is kind of a tool, especially in this episode and in these contexts. Like, I know tensions are running high and everyone's sad, but he really comes off as like the most toxic, abusive boyfriend ever. He's just so emotionally abusive.
Yeah, like he doesn't really care that Donna needs him right now, and she very clearly, like, she is in a state of just extreme anxiety here. Like, she has now lost her best friend, and then about 2 weeks later, she's lost, I wouldn't go so far as to say that Maddie was her, like, second best friend, like, if there's such a thing as a rebound best friend. I wouldn't go so far as to call Maddie that, but Maddie was a close friend. I don't think that they liked each other as much as Maddie and James liked each other, but there was definitely a closeness there where she was acting as kind of a fill-in Laura. And now she's lost that also, and she needs somebody to comfort her, and James is very selfish. It's just like, no, I don't care what you want. I'm just going to go away because it doesn't matter what we do. Like, you're right.
I don't care that I give you a ring. Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. James is not the best. But fortunately, like you said, they're not in this episode a whole lot, and I still think that they were necessary in this episode. And I will never say that again, because from this point on, I don't think that either of these characters do anything important in this series, and they haven't done a whole lot of important stuff up until this point. But I do think that their presence here was necessary in an episode where we find out that Maddie dies, or where everyone else finds out that Maddie dies.
Before we get into the big murder, solving case between all of the people, I do want to touch upon these quick subplots first. Before we get into the eye-roll-inducing baby subplot, I want to talk about the scene with Ben and Catherine because I love it so much.
Yeah, it's pretty
so
good.
fun.
Of course, he already knew from the previous episode that Catherine was alive, but now he knows who she is. And when he said, Catherine, that's a brilliant disguise, my immediate thought was, Connor doesn't think so. Connor thinks that that's like a very transparent disguise.
No, I mean, if I thought, my mistress was dead and I had conned her out of millions of dollars, and then all of a sudden, this bizarre-looking Asian person showed up with a big suit that covered up any kind of form their body might have.
Right.
And then they're like, I have a lot of money. And then I would think, well, they show me that they got a lot of money, and Catherine didn't exactly have that kind of money when she died. So, I'm saying within the context of the story, it's like, gee,
Yeah.
Catherine's dead, and now this person shows up, and it was kind of obvious.
Exactly, and I think I said this before, but it's only obvious if you take, for me, I said it's only obvious if you took a picture of Catherine and then a picture of Mr. Tajimura and put them right next to each other. I would say, okay, yeah, I can kind of sort of see it, but if I was a denizen of Twin Peaks and Mr. Tajimura came running through, I wouldn't spit out my drink and say, that's Catherine. Everybody look, that's Catherine not over there. I wouldn't do that, but yeah.
Yeah. But that oh my gosh, that scene of, are you gonna tell her? Are you gonna tell him? I'll consider it.
Yeah.
And then he goes, but you promised.
And there's a really great line. It might be the best line in the episode. The one where he says, tell them the truth. And she says, we have been telling lies our entire adult lives. Why start with the truth now?
Oh my God. I laughed out loud at that line.
Yeah, and we've been talking about how Ben Horne and Audrey, typically they seem to get what they want. Audrey Horne had a line several episodes ago where she said, I'm Audrey Horne and I get what I want. And Ben Horne, up until the point where he got arrested, he was the kind of guy who also got what he wanted through more sinister and nefarious methods, but for the most part he would get what he wanted. So it's a great way to see him in a different place than what we've been seeing him, where he is now just about at the bottom of his life. He can't get any lower, and everyone who is trustworthy, he can't trust them anymore. He can't trust Catherine. He can't trust Leland. It's really great to see this character in this place.
Yeah, I agree.
I will say it's weird, because we did see his wife, I think, in one episode, maybe two, and she was never a very important character. But I would have liked to have seen how this affects his family other than Audrey. We know how it affects Audrey because she's a major character, but I would have liked one episode to see how does this affect Johnny? How does this affect Mrs. Horne? I kind of wish that they wouldn't just sweep those characters under the rug and pretend like they don't exist.
I agree. We haven't. That was, I guess, has been one of my complaints with the series. Is the Horne household has really gone away. I guess their household is just a giant hotel, but even Audrey has really had a diminished role in season 2, and I don't like that.
Yeah, since, the first 5 or so episodes, she was held captive at One-Eyed Jack's, and we kept saying, once she gets rescued, she'll be playing a huge part in this series, but I think now her character has a similar problem that Donna and James have, where Donna and James, their whole purpose, allegedly, was to investigate the murder of Laura Palmer. Now, they didn't actually do a whole lot of that, but that was their purpose in the show. Audrey's purpose was also to investigate this murder. Well, now that the murder's been solved, I'm afraid that Audrey isn't going to have anything good to do. I know she's going to be doing stuff in the next half of the season, but she's not going to have good stuff to keep her character busy. And pretty much for the last 3 episodes, she really hasn't had anything to do other than talk to Cooper about how her dad was arrested. She hasn't really had that much to keep her character doing stuff.
Yeah, and the way I would really like this character to go is where she is trying to find something to do with Cooper that isn't solving a murder mystery. That'd be cool. Like, where does this relationship go outside of that? And maybe her figuring out that maybe their relationship isn't a possibility outside of the Laura murder mystery.
That would be great. Something where like she knows that there's no possibility at all of them having a romantic relationship, but she still wants to maintain a platonic relationship outside of this case. That would be great.
Yeah, and it's like that thing with James Bond where everyone's always wondering, well, how come the Bond girl never sticks till the next movie? And then there's kind of been this fan theory of, well, not really a fan theory, but this whole thought process of, well, I mean, imagine meeting this amazing person on this huge adventure and you save the world and they're incredibly beautiful. And then once that's over, what is there? You realize you don't have much in common, and his work is always taking him away, and all of a sudden it ends. You can imagine James Bond's relationships with each woman at the end of the last movie ending very badly.
Yeah, I agree. That's a very good metaphor for Audrey and Cooper.
Yeah, I would just really like to see that. Like after he rescued her from the clutches of One-Eye Jack, found out that her dad was an adulterous person who owned a brothel, and her classmate was murdered and raped by her dad, and then not her dad, but
right.
Leland Palmer, who was friends with her dad, and like just this crazy big thing, and then I can fall back on Cooper, and he's like, I gotta go back. Like after I'm only here to solve the murder mystery. I gotta go back. Like I would really like to focus on her character. Like honestly, if any character in Twin Peaks became the main character, if Cooper leaves, I would like it to be Audrey.
Yeah, that would be great. And we know that Kyle MacLachlan is going to be in the revival, but if he wasn't, if for some reason he was not coming back, I would have been very okay with her being the crux of this new investigation. Whatever the revival is going to be about, I would have been okay with it being centered on Audrey.
Yeah, is she coming back?
I think she is. Yeah, I think I know she is because I saw on Twitter that she posted a picture of herself on the set. But I don't remember if they've said how much of a role she's going to have in the show.
There's an interesting costume design element into this episode that I noticed pretty early on. The way Donna has her clothes, she's wearing like a sweater and then she has like something underneath it, and it's unbuttoned at the top, and so it almost looks like a white heart on her torso.
Oh yeah, I didn't notice that, but I'll need to if I go back to this episode, I'll need to keep an eye out on that.
I think what that's trying to do is visually say that she has her heart on her outside. She isn't. She's. What am I looking for, man? I'm sorry.
Heart on her sleeve. I mean that's the phrase, but I know what you're meaning, what you're getting at. Like she's very emotional.
Yeah, and I think that's
where's her emotions on her surface? Maybe. I don't know.
That's a great way of that's the way of putting it. But what do you think of this baby subplot? Because it's getting super stale and it's only really distracting, and Dick Tremaine sucks.
Yeah. I guess to play somewhat devil's advocate, I will say that they're not a huge part of this episode. That's good. We don't have 10 minutes of Andy and Lucy talking about, well, whose baby is it? We need to figure that out. We don't have a whole lot of that going on. It's a very small part of the episode. It almost feels like the only reason that they put this subplot in this episode was to tie it in with the murder investigation, where at the very end, Dick Tremaine is smoking his cigarette, and the smoke sets off the smoke alarm, and then that's when all the sprinklers go off, and then that's when Leland kills himself in the jail cell. It's weird for two reasons. Number one, I don't know where Dick got his cigarette lit because Andy didn't have a lighter. And two, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not a smoker, but I don't think that smoke would set off the sprinklers, would it?
I think it would. I mean, I don't smoke either, but yeah, I mean, basically every single place that's in an established place that isn't a casino has a no smoking policy in the 21st century.
Right.
So I don't know. I would imagine if somebody just started smoking in a theater that, in this day and age, a sprinkler system would go off, but that's just been an assumption. And to correct you, he snapped his fingers and a match appeared, like he's a magician or something.
Oh, okay.
I almost completely missed that because I was rubbing my eyes because I was just bored of the scene of it.
Right. Well, and also he asked Andy, "Do you have a light?" So I don't know why he would have asked Andy for that if he had matches. But
because he's just trying to make him look stupid because he probably knows he doesn't have a light.
I guess, yeah. You're right. Dick Tremaine is terrible, and we are going to be getting more of him throughout the rest of this season because now that Lucy has basically told them, okay, until further notice, you are both potentially the father. It's like the Schrodinger's cat. Until we find out for sure, either one of you could be the father or either one of you could not be. And so like, we're going to be getting a lot more Dick. I don't really like him like you. I don't think either one of us likes him very much. But like I said, they're not in a big part of this episode. And I don't think that here that they are as unbearable as, say, Donna and James or Josie in previous episodes.
Yeah, that's true. The one thing though, like I like the comedic elements about Twin Peaks. Do you?
Yeah. Especially when it's played right. When you have like a really dramatic episode, and then the next episode leans heavily on the humor, or you have a dramatic scene or a dramatic line, and then the next line or scene is a really funny one. I think that's when it works best.
Yeah, but I think calling the douchey, pompous guy, naming him Dick is just way too on the nose. Like I remember when that first happened, I just rolled my eyes, and in Twin Peaks, if you're doing that, then I should laugh. But I just think it's way too on the nose. If we had the exact same character of Albert Rosenfield, except his name was Dick Rosenfield, like that would be, I would laugh. I would think that was funny.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I think you're probably right. It didn't bother me too much. It reminds me in the movie Batman and Robin when Bruce and Dick are having an argument at one point about Poison Ivy, and Bruce says, "She's trying to kill you, Dick." And the way that George Clooney delivered that line almost sounds like he's not calling him by name. Like, the way you said that kind of reminds me of that. Yeah, not looking forward to more Dick Tremaine. Honestly, I think I would have been okay with this whole subplot being removed from the episode. I can almost imagine Mark Frost or David Lynch saying, we need to have somebody smoking in the police station so that the sprinklers go off, so that we can have this really atmospheric ending where Cooper is guiding Leland into the light while it's raining indoors.
Yeah.
But I just didn't care for this scene. I didn't need this scene. Like you said, it's getting stale. It hasn't moved forward any in the last couple of episodes since Andy told Lucy that his sperm count is higher, and that was like 3 or 4 episodes ago. It's been a while.
And then, like, in this episode, we have to, like, just kill time to, refresh the audience on exactly what the logistics of this subplot are, where Andy just walks up to Lucy, and then they, just say words at each other that we already know, except we just have this guy installing the sprinkler system, which I think is a nice little setup for the payoff.
Uh-huh.
But...
Yeah, that guy, and that's something I did not catch the last time I watched this episode, where when that guy is fixing the sprinklers, that is setting up the sprinklers going off later on. That is well done.
I feel like somebody said, well, we need to have somebody set off the sprinkler system. Oh, what if we have Hawk smoke? And then somebody smacked him across the face that he's way too good of a cop to do that. And they said, well, why don't we just make Dick do it? They're like, okay, whatever, fine. No one likes him anyways. Yeah, the thing is, I guess if there's are there any other subplots we're missing?
No. I will say that the, oh man, it was on the tip of my tongue, and I lost it.
Oh, I remembered.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just one more bit of a bit contrived writing that I didn't like, because I swear, people, we're going to get into stuff I do like, which is the rest of the episode.
Yeah, and we should also point out the stuff we've talked about so far is less than a fifth of the whole episode.
Oh, absolutely. Like, this episode is awesome, but trust me, we're getting there. We just want to get the bad out of the way first, because it's minuscule.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. When you have Andy just sitting at a bar, just saying...
That was what I was going to talk about. Yeah, go ahead.
Just saying plot important information out loud repeatedly just for a character. Like, and that's been... Like, when did Harold Smith die? Like, episode 6 or 7?
3 or 4 episodes ago, yeah. So what Connor is talking about is when Harold Smith died, he left on his suicide note some French phrase. I don't remember what it was. In this episode, Andy...
En sabanur. Oh, wait. That's Egyptian, my bad.
Yeah, Andy is sitting at the double R, which, by the way, you were asking if there were any other subplots. There was Norma talking with her mom, but it's stupid and doesn't have anything to do with anything, so we won't have to talk about it. But Andy is just sitting here and he's saying, something solitaire, and then Donna is walking by and she's like, what is that, what are you saying? And then he tells her, well, it was on a Harold's suicide note, and like you said, why in the world is he repeating this phrase like 4 or 5 episodes after Harold died? It may not have been 4 or 5, but it's been a few episodes. Why is he repeating that phrase now, just out of nowhere? He's just hanging out in public repeating that phrase. Why?
I don't get it either. And like, should that be classified police information too? Why is he just telling, oh, hi Donna, it was Harold Smith's suicide? Like, what?
Yeah, and it is Andy. It's not like it was Hawk making a dumb mistake like that, but at the same time, I expect better out of Andy. Even Andy shouldn't be making a dumb mistake like that.
Yeah,
And,
but either way, where that goes is good. I just wish it was in a less contrived way.
yeah, and I liked when they go to Miss Tremont's house and it's not the old lady with her grandson. I thought that was really interesting, and it shows us that we already knew there was something going on with them because the little boy does the magic trick with the cream corn, but
Yeah.
now we know, okay, it's something really magical, like actual real magic and not just a really fancy trick.
Yeah, and I really like. It might sound hypocritical of me going. I kind of like that the old woman is like, oh yeah, this letter showed up, and then she turns to Cooper like, I meant to turn it in, and then
Right.
she's
The way she said that was like she's trying to make sure that she doesn't get in trouble at all. Like, I meant to turn it in, don't worry. I thought that was pretty funny, yeah.
But the thing, what I really like about that is in those 5 seconds of characterization, like the actress playing that older woman perfectly encapsulates a personality that would seem consistent with her. Oh, I got this letter. I guess I'll give it to her eventually, but not right now.
Yeah.
And that is completely like fine. It's what's not fine is just having somebody who's completely established just saying a French phrase over and over again in the middle of a diner while someone completely unrelated just comes up and goes, "What are you saying, Andy?" Like,
It is the picture definition of we need the plot to go in this direction, so how do we manipulate the plot so that it happens that way?
Yeah.
It's the opposite of what writing should be, where characters organically go in a direction, and that's where you take the plot.
right. And I can just imagine like the writers' room just sitting there going, "Well, how do we come up with a better way?" And they just couldn't come up with a better way.
Yeah.
Like I can imagine writers like blushing at us saying this, but it's still there.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about something we liked about this episode?
All right, I want to start with that final scene with. I guess we're just going right into the best
Oh
bit.
wait, I do have one more thing I hate. Sorry. Um, Ben Horn is in jail. How long has he been in jail? Like 3 episodes or 2?
um.
All of this episode and all of the previous episode.
Yeah.
And
that's-
he got arrested at the end of, was it at the end of the episode before last?
Yes.
Okay. See, I was thinking that he was in jail while Maddie was being murdered, but I guess the way the timeline is, they're not exactly sure when Maddie was murdered, and they're thinking maybe that Ben Horn did it right before he was arrested, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
because
hold on. Now I'm trying to rack my brain around it. So this episode he's in jail.
yeah,
Last episode he has a lawyer.
yeah, and he was in jail, like he was in custody at one point or another throughout all
Okay.
of last episode.
Was it last episode when Harry's like, all right, listen, Coop, I love you, but I've had enough of this Tibet stuff.
Yes.
Okay. And then now he is. Okay, so it was at the end of the episode before last where he was arrested. So
Right, yeah. And I was just thinking, because Ben in this, or Harry in this episode is like, I still think Ben did it. And I was trying to think, I was like, how could he have possibly done it if he was in custody? But I guess they're thinking that it could have been, there's like a span of like a few hours before he got arrested where he could have murdered Maddie. But
Yeah.
that was the whole episode I was watching. I was thinking that didn't sound right. But I guess now that I've talked it out, it sounds better now. So that could have been a complaint, but it's not.
All right. Oh, and there's also a brilliant piece of writing of the fox fur. I
Uh-huh.
remember talking about like Leland, like talking. Oh, I like that one touch Ray Wise where he just reaches over and picks up that taxidermy.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I think I even said like I bet that wasn't even in the script. It was just something like Ray Wise did to add to the character. Nope, that was completely intentional.
Wow, and you know what? Wow, and I had completely forgotten about that. Because whenever they were in Ben Horn's office and they said, look, it's a taxidermized fox, I was thinking, okay, well, we know that it's not Ben Horn, so I was just assuming that Leland had one also. I didn't remember that he reached up and grabbed the fur like that. That's right, wow, okay.
And the way Ray Wise played that scene was so natural. It just seemed like it was a character like an actor getting lost in the scenery, like in a very natural way.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, look at that, a fox. And he kind of reaches over, and I remember he picked up some fur, and then Ben was like, Leland, are you listening to me? He goes, yeah, and he just stuffs it in his pocket.
Right.
So, yeah, no, that was a brilliant setup and payoff. That was so cool. That is what you do with television.
Uh-huh.
I love the final scene with Leland Palmer. It is a brilliant piece of writing and acting and direction. It is amazing. I don't know who directed this, but it was not David Lynch. It was not Mark Frost. I don't even know if it was somebody who had directed any previous episodes.
It
but
was Tim Hunter. I remember seeing that name on the screen because there's a character in DC Comics that Neil Gaiman created called Tim Hunter.
All right.
But I've never heard of this name before in relation to Twin Peaks.
Yeah, anyways, whoever this guy is did a great job directing this episode. There are Dutch angles that are used effectively. He really knows how to capture setting. There are like shots there'll be scenes that start with a shot from way up high, like a crane shot, looking down on the set, and it'll like push into a close up. So I really like the way everything's directed about this episode. But there's that scene where like the rain is like the pseudo rain is coming down. Cooper has his hair down, and then Leland is confessing, and it's almost like a baptism at the same time, asking for forgiveness, and like it is so like rich with material and symbols to read into. And when he's like saying Laura, and like he's like going to the light, and then he dies, like man, that is powerful acting. Powerful.
Yeah, it was really good stuff. Like you said, Ray Wise is consistently good. I don't think that he's had a bad episode in this entire series, and I'm going to be kind of sad to see him go because he dies in this episode. Yeah, that whole scene at the end was really well done. And it's going to be interesting when you and I talk about Fire Walk With Me, because we'll get to see Ray Wise once again, and it will be stuff set before Season 1. And we'll get to see a different side to Leland. Where here, we're getting to see him jump back and forth between Bob and Leland, and it kind of seems like Leland is 100% the victim. In Fire Walk With Me, it kind of tries to play around with that a little bit more, in the same way that one episode in Season 1, Bobby was telling Dr. Jacoby that Laura forced him to sell drugs, but then in Fire Walk With Me, we don't get that picture at all. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the movie kind of handles what we're already being told here.
Yeah. Speaking of Bobby's dad shows up in this episode. So.
Yeah, kind of out of nowhere. We haven't seen him in like 3 or 4 episodes. I think the last time we saw him was when he was telling Cooper about the message that they got from outer space.
That was 7 episodes ago.
Wow. Yeah, he just kind of, and he's one of those characters who every time he shows up, we're always happy to see him because he's this very well-read military man. He's a very, it just seems like he's a bunch of contradictions, and we love him so much, but he hardly ever has anything to do with the plot. It's mostly just his relationship with other characters, like how he's talking to Cooper or how he's talking to Bobby and stuff like that.
Yeah. I was actually okay with his presence because he is an authority. He is somebody who has contributed to the mystery.
Yeah.
He is somebody who you would think, like he's somebody, and him talking about some kind of spiritual dream he had, a vision, he says. So I just wish he was in the season a little bit more.
Yeah, I wish he had something to do other than the mysterious, what do you do, that's classified, I can't tell you. I wish we knew more of what he was doing.
Yeah, and I would have done without like the Perry Mason ending this episode has.
Oh, what do you mean?
Where they're all sitting around talking about the case, and then I love Albert. He doesn't really have anything funny to do in this episode, unfortunately, but that's okay because...
The closest thing to funny he had was when they were all in the room when they were all getting ready for... It was right before Bobby's dad and the old butler came in, and Ben Horne said, "Do you want us to hum?" And he was being sarcastic. And then Albert says, "I think things are going great." And what was great about that, I could not tell if Albert was being serious and trying to shut up Ben, or if he was also being sarcastic. I couldn't tell, and that was really good.
But what I do like about Albert in this episode is he understands, like, it's a murder, it's getting really serious now, so he's kind of cutting the fast talking.
Yeah.
It's consistent with his character, especially where we last left him with him, saying, "I love you, Harry," and then leaving. But the thing is, like, at the end, I love Albert. I just hate the line that they put in his mouth of, "Maybe that's all Bob is. He's just the evil that men do." It's like, come on, guys. You don't have to explain it to us. We got that. We got that. Oh, man.
I did like the line from him because at one point, Harry keeps saying, well, probably Leland is just insane. There is no actual demon who possessed him. And Albert, it's not that he's making fun of Harry, but he is there to kind of refute that because he says people saw Bob. He talks about Maddie and Sarah both physically saw this man. So it could not be possible that Leland just went insane and killed a whole bunch of people because other people who were not inside Leland's head saw this guy. And so I think other than that line that you said, and that was very cheesy and on the nose, other than that line, I did like that Al was kind of there to remind us of stuff that throws Harry's suspicions under the bus. Like, it's not at all possible for this to just be the lunacies of one man.
Right.
But I did like, you were saying you didn't like the Perry Masonness of that scene. I did like the way that they were all kind of, and maybe this is what you didn't like. Other than that one line that Albert said, I did like the way they were all talking about, Bobby's dad says, there's more in heaven and earth than's dreamt of in our philosophy. I like him delivering that line. That seemed like something that he would be the one to say. And I just like the way they're all just kind of, this doesn't really feel like a victory to them. They've caught the bad guy. It's a Pyrrhic victory where, they have defeated the bad guy, but this is not a time for them to celebrate. They're all still kind of very mellow because look at all that they've lost in chasing down this bad guy. I really like that.
Yeah, and what I do like about this is that they caught Bob's host, and Bob's host is dead, but Bob is still out there.
Yeah.
I do like that, but I felt it would have been a little bit more poignant if they didn't just say, what if that's all Bob is? Like, the idea of Bob being in you and Bob being in me, I like that a lot.
Right.
So them saying that, like, just so anyone who wasn't paying any attention could also get that, it's a little problematic because this whole series has been built on details and things that you're supposed to pick up on. So I figured that kind of ambiguity would have been a lot better. Like, even if it just, like, ended with them all sitting there, I like the idea of a moment of reflection. I really do. But then it just fades into this, where do you think Bob is now? And then it'll just cut to, like, then the owl goes, ah! And then it freeze frames and then ends. Like, that would have been great. And then with those last, like, 10 seconds, we could think, oh my gosh, that could be me. It's a point of view shot for a reason. Like,
right. And how several episodes ago I was saying that the owls don't really mean anything? Well, I was an idiot. You told me back then when I said that the owls are representative of Bob. Well, here it is. It's as plain as it could possibly be. I have no idea how I didn't pick up on this the first time I was watching this episode. That anytime we see an owl, it's very likely that is a representation of Bob. And I don't know why I didn't pick up on that earlier.
Yeah, I think what happened when I really started thinking that was in one of, I think it's either Maddie or Sarah Palmer has a vision where an owl is superimposed onto his face.
Right, yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, because I remember I even said, like, the owls are not what they seem. Oh, that doesn't mean anything. And while I don't think it really means, like, the owls not being what they seem really means anything, because owls are predators and Bob's a predator, so the owls pretty much are what they seem.
Yeah.
If you're superimposing an owl onto a person's face, and you're also a giant who is like being very cryptic and talking about symbolism, then that is about as they seem as you can be.
I guess the way to interpret that line is Leland Palmer is not what he seems. He looks like he's a loving father and loving husband, but actually he is possessed by a demon and he is the killer going around and he's actually psychotic. Like, I guess that's what that line means, but it takes a little work to get there.
You know what? You're probably right. My bad. Yeah, that does seem like a little bit more. That's cryptic on a level that's a little bit above my level.
Right. Before we get away from it, I will say Tim Hunter, he is a guy who has directed a whole bunch of TV episodes from many TV shows. He directed an episode of Gotham. He directed a couple of episodes of the 4400, an episode of Dexter, a few episodes of Mad Men. He directed 3 episodes of Twin Peaks, 1 from season 1 and 2 from season 2.
Oh, well, what episode from season 1 did he direct?
5. I don't have the title of it, but it's the 5th episode.
I remember when that episode aired, I was like, this might be my favorite episode of Twin Peaks.
Yeah, this guy's got a lot of experience directing, and he knows what he's doing. And at this point in his career, he actually hadn't directed that much stuff. His earliest directing credit was from '82, and then Twin Peaks was '90 to '91. So he hadn't directed that much stuff at this point.
So I got a question then. What episode of Gotham did he direct?
Viper was the name of the episode. I don't know if you've seen it or not. I haven't seen it, I don't think.
I did. That episode sucks.
Directing sucked or just writing and acting sucked?
I mean, it's Gotham. The writing and acting sucks. There's no direction on Earth that could really redeem it. But there's like the one good episode of Gotham is an episode called Penguin's Umbrella. And I was like, if he directed that, then this guy has been doing good work, and I just haven't even recognized it. Like, and I've seen him just all around.
Let's see. I feel like there's more to talk about here, but I don't really know where to begin.
How do you feel about all the clues coming together? Like the little man dancing, the gum you like is coming back in style is one of the best reveals. I love it. The whole sequence in the roadhouse is incredible. I love that. The way it's directed, that's another one of those scenes that starts off with a crane shot from way up high, and it just swoops down onto the character's level. The same way, like the shot of when they lock Leland into the room.
Yeah.
And then I remember there's a shot where it's way up high and it comes down. I'm sorry this is stream of consciousness and I'm jumping around, but I remember that one episode when they arrest Leland of murdering Jacques Renault, and then at the beginning of the next one, he's in that very same room and then like it comes out of a hole in the wall.
Yes.
And it's very eerie and he's all acting weird. That is such good foreshadow.
Yeah.
Because he's acting all weird and and sweating and everything.
Yeah.
During that episode. Now later in this episode, he's back in that room and he's just gone crazy. So that's a great callback. I like that a lot. But anyways, coming back to this, the scene in the bar is another one that is it starts off with a crane shot from up high. You get a really good view of the entire set, and then it comes down onto the characters' levels. But that whole sequence, the way the lightning is, the way it's lit, the way all the characters are framed into the shots, the surreal nature of it, but it's also pretty grounded in a more of a Mark Frost sort of way. The giant, giving the ring, and the ring falling onto the ground, and then
that was a cool shot. That might have been my favorite shot in the episode.
Oh yeah, the way it comes in and out of focus, and then when he mentioned something about gum, when Leland mentioned something about gum, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a clue about this. Where? I'm like shooting through my mind of all the clues, but I couldn't think of the gum. And then when the Brian Azzarello guy turns to him and says, "That gum you like is coming back in style," I went, yeah! And like it was like one of those fist pump moments. And then, oh my gosh, everything about that scene is awesome. The way it ends with him giving the thumbs up right as he leaves. Colonel Briggs, Major. How come we always want to call him Colonel?
I don't know, because I do it too. I don't know why I keep wanting to call him that.
Major Briggs. They call him Major Briggs, don't they?
Yeah. He is a major in the show, yeah.
So Major Briggs walks in with the bartender at the last minute. Like, something, like everything about that was just right. And it's like this bizarre communion between all of them coming together and putting the pieces together. It almost felt like something that'd be in a Quentin Tarantino movie.
Uh-huh.
Like Reservoir Dogs or The Hateful Eight, just people sorting things out, but with a supernatural bend to it. I really love that scene.
Yeah, I liked it because it reminds me of any detective story where at the end of the story you've got all the principal characters and the detective says, "I suppose you're wondering why I called you all here today." And you've got all these characters here, and from a logistical standpoint, does it really make any sense that they called Big Ed and Bobby and Leo Johnson there? No, not really. Those guys didn't have anything at all to do with the Laura Palmer murder, but it's still kind of cool to see some of these guys. Like, otherwise, we never would have seen Big Ed. It would have been like 3 episodes before we'd see Big Ed again, because we haven't seen him. I don't think we saw him last episode, and we might have saw him a little bit in the episode before, but we haven't had a lot to do with Big Ed, so it's nice to see him. And Bobby had a really fantastic line when he tells Hawk, "Give yourself a raise, Hawk." Like,
I love that part.
That's just it's a jerk line, but it is so Bobby. It was a perfect line from him, and he hasn't had a really mean line like that in a while, so that was good. But I'm not sure how I feel about all of his air quotes clues about who did it, because ultimately it's not the clues that lead him to who did it. It's him remembering the dream that he had in like episode 3 of Twin Peaks, which
it's him connecting the dots to the real life clues through the dream.
Okay, some of it I think maybe works, but I still think it's a little sketchy. Like when he says, "The little man, he danced in my dream." Well, Leland Palmer dances, and I'm thinking, okay, that's not going to hold up in court. Like, and I know that they've got a confession out of him, and he's dead now, so it doesn't really matter. But like, I feel like that's a pretty spotty clue. I'm not sure. Like, I'd have to write down all of the clues that he had. And this is where we've been watching this show roughly 1 episode a week. I almost think that this is where that is too long, where we should have been watching it like, 2 or 3 episodes a day, where it could all be more fresh in my mind. Because right now, it's all kind of like, it's hard for me to remember like the gum, like what significance the gum had.
Well, that's the thing about it is, this little man, I know you thought he was like the spiritual version of Mike.
Uh-huh.
I think you might have been wrong. I think he is the spiritual representation of Leland.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it's even like a young Bob. I mean, I'm just throwing stuff around.
I don't think we'll ever actually have a confirmation one way or another. This is one of those aspects of the show that's always going to remain a little mysterious.
And I like that. I really like the speculation we can do. Because it has something to do with Leland, undoubtedly, because he talks about he is sitting with Laura in his dream. That is important. He gets up and starts dancing when the music starts playing, in a way that Leland, danced. He talks about the gum that you like is coming back in style, which is a thing, which is a word that he's sending into his brain. He's, referencing Maddie Ferguson, which is something that Leland has to have known, that his niece looks exactly like his daughter.
Right.
Like, but he says this is my cousin.
Yeah, the little man said, or he said, she's my cousin or she's my sister or something like that.
Yeah. But doesn't she look exactly like Laura Palmer?
Right.
But I know this is all weird and surreal, and, they're not going to have any kind of concrete theory one way or the other, but there's evidence to connect him to Leland in some manner or another.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point of his dream, is that everything this little man said and did connects him to Leland in some way.
Yeah, and I still think maybe I've just got, I'm a little bitter because Cooper, he has the dream, and then he calls Harry, and he says, I know who killed Laura Palmer. No, it can wait until morning, and then the next morning he says, oh, I forgot. Like, I'm still a little bit upset that Cooper didn't just go ahead and say, yeah, let's meet at 3 in the morning, and we can go ahead and end this right now. Just from a character standpoint, that seemed like a really dumb move. But I think now that you mention it, now that you're bringing some of this up, so the little man in Cooper's dream, he said that gum you like is coming back in style, right?
He said that, yeah.
Okay, so see, I had forgotten that. Watching like one episode a week, stuff like that kind of slips from my mind, and we haven't really had any references to the Red Room since Cooper's dream. It's mostly been stuff set in the real world. We have had supernatural stuff, like when the giant came to visit Cooper, and when Mrs. Tremont was talking to Donna. We've had supernatural stuff in the real world, but we haven't had real world characters going to the supernatural world. And so maybe that's why it's kind of a little foggy for me, and I was having trouble remembering some of that.
Yeah, I love the little man, and I kind of remember everything. I try to remember everything he said, because he says it in that funny voice, and that gum you like is coming back in style. He says something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember reading that subtitle, and that stuck. But I think the point is that you're kind of supposed to forget about it, so it can stick into your subconscious the way a dream sticks into your subconscious, the way it affects Cooper.
Yeah.
And so and then I like that part where it kind of is an extreme close up on his face, and then there's a quick superimposed like fade in of the dream onto his head. Like, all this subconscious memory stuff is coming to the surface now.
Yeah. That was great, and that was whenever they were outside Miss Tremont's house, right?
I think so. They might have been in the bar. I can't remember.
I think it was right after they left that lady's house, and then Donna had the envelope, and Cooper said, "Open it, Donna." And then she's reading it, and then we're zooming in on his face, and we see.
You're right.
Yeah. I will say, once again, I'd like to float the theory that old Brian Azzarello is actually the physical mortal form of the giant.
I agree with you.
Because Cooper is talking to Mr. What's his face, the shoe salesman, and he says, "You've got to talk to the giant." And then Cooper says, "I don't know how to do that." And then What's his face just kind of laughs at him. Well, then the very next thing that we see, Cooper is in the hallway of the Great Northern, and then the old man walks by, and he says something about that milk is going to get warm, and then he gives a thumbs up. And I was thinking, he's got to be the giant. And then the old man is there in that scene, and then briefly the giant shows up to give Cooper his ring back, and I don't think it's ever confirmed, but I'm leaning towards him being the giant.
Yeah. One thing that I do like about that is he says it's a reversal on what he said in the room at the beginning of season 2, and now I hate that scene as much as I did back in the day. Like, I hate that scene with a burning passion of 1,000 suns. But he says something along the lines of, "It's warm, it's going to cool down on you."
Yeah.
And then he says, your cool milk is warming up now." And
okay, yeah, it is a reversal. You're right, yeah.
So I like that. Okay, this does retroactively make that scene make more sense. I still hate it because it sucks, but when you think about it, he's saying that during that scene, that's when he kind of got caught up with One-Eyed Jacks, right?
Yes. It was when he was shot right after coming back from One-Eyed Jacks, yeah. Yes.
So but that's really when One-Eyed Jacks became a pretty key component into this series.
Yeah.
So that's almost as if he's saying, "You're getting colder." And so that comes really into play when he says your cold milk is getting warmer, and then he gives him a thumbs up and a wink, and then Cooper says, "Getting warmer."
Right.
And you know what? It's things like that where I need the show to be a little on the nose, because I wouldn't have gotten that at all if he hadn't.
I didn't get it, that he was saying like, "Oh, I'm on the right trail." I didn't get that until you just revealed that just now.
Yeah, and I only got that because he said, "Getting warmer."
Right. Yeah, and this is another one of those things, I've mentioned this many times before. I really love how you've got all of these supernatural entities in this show, and pretty much all of them are less evil than Bob. Bob seems to be the only one that's actually just straight up evil. We were told that Mike was helping him do the killing, and then Mike kind of got cold feet. But all these other spiritual entities, and even like mortals who are helping via some spiritual thing, they are trying to help, but they're not allowed. It's like there's some rule that says, okay, you guys can help the mortals who are in this investigation, but you're not allowed to give them too much information. So the giant, the log lady, Mrs. Tremont, Mike, the little man, they're all giving little clues along the way, but they're not allowed to say, hey, I would go check out Leland Palmer if I was you. And I really like that they're all doing it in this very casual way, where it's little clues building up over time, and it's extremely hard to pick up on it all, but it almost feels like there is a method to their madness. Like, they're not just doing this because they're bored. It's almost like there's some boss ghost that they all report to, and God or whatever it is saying, you cannot help them too much. There's a rule system. There's some kind of hierarchy that they have to follow.
And I like how interpretive this is, because the way I'm getting it, and the evidence I'll use is this like supernatural inception, like shared dreaming that is revealed between Cooper and Laura.
Yeah.
Where it turns out Laura was in that dream, except it was happening from the past. And she mentioned that it was hard to talk, like it hurt to talk, or it was very difficult to talk to Cooper, or she calls him the old man in her dream.
Right.
I think it's very difficult, and it hurts for these ghosts to be in these forms and to communicate through these forms.
Yeah, that's very possible, yeah.
And so that's why I think to like straight up say the thing is like almost impossible for them, because it would just hurt them too much. Now that might seem weird and contrived, and maybe whoever the boss like ghost is just saying he built these bodies with that way of, well, you can't help them too much, or you can only help them this much. You can only intervene into the material world this much. But I think the reason is it just hurts them to strip talk. That's why they have to be cryptic, because it's them giving information in a way that doesn't hurt them so much.
I think that's very likely. Did you ever read or watch It by Stephen King?
I read a little bit of the book.
Okay. I've read the book, and it's been, maybe 10 years since I read it. And then I watched the miniseries some time back, more recently than I read the book. But in the book, they mention over and over again that there's these different spiritual entities. There's It, which is the clown spider that they are. You don't mind if I spoil things, do you?
No, go for it.
Okay. Sorry. There's the evil monster that they're trying to kill, and then there's the turtle, which is this neutral entity, and a few times they say the turtle couldn't help us. And then there's also the other, which is even more vague, and it's just this thing that doesn't even have a shape, and it occasionally helps them throughout the story. And this episode and all these supernatural entities kind of reminds me of that, how you've got different creatures, spiritual beings, and they each serve a purpose, and they're each on a different level of good or bad. This kind of reminds me of that. Except I think maybe it works a little better here, because you're getting a lot of time to introduce all these different characters, whereas in It, you've only really got the creature that they're trying to kill. The turtle and the other don't really play that big of a story in that book. Even though it's like, 1,500 pages long, you don't get a whole lot of screen time for those creatures. Whereas here, you get a whole lot of them throughout the 30-something episodes, and I think it works a little better here.
Yeah, I read a little bit of it, and I've seen people talk about the miniseries, the TV miniseries, but I've never heard about any other entities besides the clown demon.
Yeah, they're not a big part in the episode. It's like, or not episode, in the book. It's like maybe 5 lines devoted to the turtle and the other. Like, it's a very, very minor passing reference.
Okay, I love Leland Palmer in this so much. I'm trying to specifically talk about the part where they have him in the room and he just starts flipping out and shouting lines, and even where they have him in the cuffs and he's just acting, he's just chewing up the scenery, but there isn't really any scenery for him to chew. He's just sitting in a chair.
Yeah, and usually when someone says that they're chewing the scenery, that's not necessarily a good thing, or they're saying like, well, it's cheesy but it's enjoyable. This you're right. He is chewing the scenery. He's very in your face, but it's good. It's not bad and it's not cheesy, I don't think.
Yeah, and usually like 5 times out of 10, I'll say like, oh, it's such a scenery chewing performance in a negative light. But a lot of the times, I'm very approving of an actor really putting in an effort and using his environment and just giving it all. Sometimes it comes off as over the top or cheesy or just trying too hard.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, like Heath Ledger's Joker, such a scenery chewing performance.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
yeah, it's a mouthful.
And then like Jack Nicholson's Joker is a scenery chewing performance. If you ever see the movie Sicario, by comparison, Benicio del Toro's performance is a scenery chewing performance. But I love all of those performances. They're great performances. I think Benicio del Toro's performance from Sicario last year was the best performance period of last year. Seeing Ray Wise doing that, and he gets so much to do. He gets to be creepy, he gets to be scary, he gets to shout, he gets to whisper, he gets to growl, he gets to be sad, he gets to be happy a little bit. He gets to do everything. And what a way for him to go out. It is a perfect.
I was fixated on when he was handcuffed. I was fixated on him twisting his one arm around so that he was kind of like, it almost looked like he's like trying to spin his hand while he's handcuffed. I was fixated on that while he was sitting in the chair.
Oh yeah, you just can't take your eyes off of him. He is perfect in this episode.
Yeah.
I also really like Kyle MacLachlan's performance.
I believe he got nominated for something, if I'm not mistaken. I was looking on that, and I just took my tab off of Internet Movie Database. Let me go back. But he was nominated for some award for this episode.
Who was?
Kyle MacLachlan.
Oh yeah. Well, what I like is if we have Ray Wise being just this huge personality, but he's it is a legitimate acting. Like it takes legitimately good acting to be this over the top, but also be this believable.
Right.
I think Kyle MacLachlan is doing equally decent work being understated.
You mentioned Heath Ledger's Joker, and I remember somebody, and I can't for the life of me remember who said this, but somebody was saying that you have these, we will call them scenery-chewing performances, you have these people who are very loud in their performance. They're very there. You notice them, and they're very good performances, and people always pay a lot of attention to those. And then this guy, he was talking about the Dark Knight movie, and he said, you've also got the person who is a lot more subtle in their performance. It's a lot more nuanced, and he was saying that about Aaron Eckhart's Two-Face in The Dark Knight. He was saying that he gives a very good performance, but nobody talks about it because everyone's too busy noticing Heath Ledger being really amazing in that movie. I would say, in regards to this episode, that Kyle MacLachlan is that. He's very good, very nuanced. I like a lot of what he's doing here, but it's easy to forget that he's as good as he is because we're so busy talking about how great Ray Wise is.
Yeah, and you'll usually see the big, boisterous, loud performance next to the subtle, nuanced, subdued performance. And having that kind of a combination is always, not always, that's a stereotype. But more often than not, that's such a great combination.
Yeah.
And when you get two fantastic actors to do that well, like you just can't go wrong.
Right.
Especially when you have those two in scenes together. And Ray Wise and Kyle MacLachlan have like so much, have multiple scenes together, and they have a lot of screen time together. So, but what Kyle MacLachlan's doing with his eyes, what he's doing with his face, he doesn't even really move his face a whole lot, but just in his eyes you can see so many thoughts and feelings and emotions and lines of logic that he's following, just what he's going to do. And like there's that part where he hears in his head, where he hears that Gummy is coming back in style, and then the giant appears, and it's just like an extreme close-up of his face, just centered in the frame. And then you can just see the clarity. You can just see the clarity with no special effects, no, red room. There's music, and there's really nice lighting, but more than anything, there's just his face perfectly conveying the clarity that he's finally reached.
Yeah. It's good, and I mentioned, Kyle MacLachlan was nominated for his second Emmy, he got his second Emmy Award nomination for this episode, but it doesn't say anything about him winning the Emmy, so I'm assuming he didn't win since it doesn't say anything about that on Internet Movie Database.
They probably didn't.
But yeah, that speaks volumes for his performance that he was nominated.
Yeah, then there's even that, just very briefly, I feel like I'm talking a lot about this, but there's that part where he's just guiding Leland to the light, and like that got me emotionally. I didn't cry or anything, but the cockles of my heart were warmed. I got goosebumps, and yeah, I really like that.
It was good, yeah. It's one of those things where you might be wondering, does he really deserve to go into the light? But I would say yes, he does, because he's, at least in the context of this series and the episodes we've seen, he's not been in control of his actions. So once we get the feeling that Bob has left the building, you really do feel sorry for Leland.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like the whole Bob analogy, and I know this is getting into very touchy subjects, but I feel this is consistent with the nature of Bob, the way this television show has been portraying him. I feel like it's almost a metaphor for childhood rape or molestation.
Yeah, I think you mentioned last episode when he's dancing, or not dancing, when he is beating Maddie, and then he's like kind of dancing with her around the room. You said that that's kind of a very screen-friendly version of sex, and I think that you're right. Like when he is dancing with Donna in this episode, and then he kind of like squeezes her really tight, like that. I definitely got that feeling, but at the same time, I think that the episode leaves it open where you could interpret it that way, that Bob is just a face for non-consensual sex, but also you could interpret it as he's an actual demon because people like Maddie and Sarah actually saw Bob, and so you could go both ways with it. It could be a supernatural thing, or it could be a metaphor for a very real-world kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think it's like a demon, and rape means, the dictionary definition of rape is to take by force. I feel like his body was raped from him.
Oh yeah, and that's I think that's a very valid point. I wasn't trying to say that you were wrong. I was just saying I think this episode, the way Al says, well, people saw Bob, I think they're trying to leave it open so that you can interpret it multiple ways.
Oh, and I agree with that. And I think it's a very smart way to convey these things. And I really like how respectful and non-exploitive the show has been toward, well, with one exception, has been towards the darkness of the real world horrors.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think I can only think of one example of where it really felt kind of crass and unnecessary. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
I can't think of anything. We've been talking on this for a while, but
there was a lot to say. This was a big one.
This was a huge episode. I really like this episode, and I think I like it a little bit more after talking about it.
Yeah, I think this was one of the best ones, and it's gonna be not fun having to go to the next several episodes. It's gonna be hard for them to live up to this one.
I agree.
And I'm very much looking forward to talking with you about the next several episodes because you haven't seen those yet, so that'll be exciting.
Yeah. So you don't have anything more to say?
I do not.
Well, thank you guys very much for listening to this installment of the Podcast Boys. We talked about Season 2, Episode 9 of Twin Peaks called Arbitrary Law. That's a good title, fitting title.
Yeah.
Just to go off on a little bit of a rant, I've always felt like every single episode of Twin Peaks has been like a good title for the previous episode.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last couple of episodes, that title is apt.
A good one that I was thinking of was Cooper's Dreams, where he doesn't dream at all in that episode.
Yeah, it's like he had a dream at the end of episode 5.
Right.
There was dreams at the end of episode 5, and then this one's all that 6th episode is all going off of information that he learned from his dream. So I guess it, and then episode 7 is called Realization Time. Well, that would have been a great episode title for episode 6.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Now the titles do feel apt for the episode that they are assigned to. So
yeah.
Anyways, next time, Comics Kid and I will be talking about Twin Peaks Season 2, Episode 10. The title for that episode is Dispute Between Brothers. I'm Connor Nielsen.
And I am the Comics Kid 2099.
We'll see you next time.
Have a good one.